Hello guys, today is November 3rd. Let's read the next chapter of Peter and Wendy. Chapter 12. The children are carried off. The pirate attack had been a complete surprise, a sure proof that the unscrupulous Hook had conducted it improperly. But to surprise Redskins fairly, is beyond the wit of the white man. By all the by all the unwritten laws of savage warfare, it is always the redskin who attacks, and with the willingness of his race, he does it just before the dawn, at which time he knows the courage of the whites to be at its lowest ebb. The white men have in the meantime made a rude stockade on the summit of yonder undulating ground, at the foot of which a stream runs, for it is destruction to be too far from water. There the awaits on there they awaits on there they awaits on there they awaits the onslaught. There they awaits on the onslaught. The inexperienced ones clutching their revolvers and treading on twigs. But the old hands sleeping tranquilly. Until it's before the dawn. Through the long black night the savage scouts wriggled, snake-like, among the grass without stirring a blade. The brushwood closes behind them, as silent as a sand. The brushwoods close behind them, as silent as sand into which a mole has dived. Not a sound is to be heard, save when they give vent to a wonderful imitation of the lonely call of the coyote. The cry is answered by the other braves, and some of them do it even better than the coyotes, who are not very good at it. So the chill hours wear on, and the long suspense is horribly trying to the pale face who has to live through it for the first time. But to the trained hand, those ghastly calls and still ghastlier silence are but an intimidation of how the night is marching. That this was the usual procedure was so well known to Hooke that in disregarding it he cannot be excused on the plea of ignorance. Let's do this again. That this was the usual procedure was so well known to Hooke that in disregarding it he cannot be excused of the plea of ignorance. The Pickaninnies, on their part, trusted implicitly to this honor, and their whole action of the night stands out in marked contrast to his. They left nothing undone that was consistent with the reputation of their tribe, with the alertness of the senses which is at once the marvel and despair of the civilized peoples. They knew that the pirates were on the islands for the moment one of them trod on a dry stick, and in an incredibly short space of time the coyote cries began. Every foot of ground between the spot where Hook had landed his forces and the home under the trees was stealthily examined by the braves wearing their moccasins with the heels in front. They found only one hillock with a stream at its base, so that Hook had no choice. Here he must establish himself and wait for just before the dawn. Everything being thus everything being thus mapped out with almost diabolical cunning, the main body of the Redskins folded their blankets around them, and in the phlegmatic manner that is to them, the prayer of manhood squatted above the children's home, awaiting the cold moments when they should deal pale death. Here, here dreaming, though wide awake, of the exquisite torture they were to put in at the break of day, those confined savages were found by the treacherous Hook, from the accounts afterwards supplied by such of the scouts as escaped the carnage. Let's do this again. Not very well. Here dreaming, though wide awake, of the exquisite tortures to which they were put in at the break of day, those confined savages were found by the treacherous Hook, from the accounts afterwards supplied by such of the scouts as escaped the carnage. From the accounts afterwards supplied by such of the scouts as escapes the carnage, he does not seem to even to have paused at the rising ground, though it is certain that in that grey light he must have seen it. No thought of waiting to be attacked appears from it. No thought of waiting to be attacked appeared from first to last to have visited his subtle mind. No thought of waiting to be attacked appears from first to last to have visited his subtle mind. No thought of waiting to be attacked appears from first to last to have visited his subtle mind. No thought of waiting to be attacked appears from first to last to have visited his subtle mind. To have visited. No thought of waiting to be attacked appears from first to last to have visited his subtle mind. He would not even hold off till the night was nearly spent. He would not even hold off till the night was nearly spent. On he pounded with no policy but to fall to. What could the bewildered scouts do, masters as they were of every warlike artifice save this one, but trot helplessly after him, exposing themselves fatally to view, the while they gave pathetic utterance to the coyote cry. Around the brave tiger lily were a dozen of her stoutest warriors, and they suddenly saw the perfidious pirates bearing down upon them. Fell down, fell from their, fell from their eyes, fell from their eye, fell from their eyes then the film through which they had looked at victory. No more would they torture at the stake, for then the happy hunting grounds now. No more would they torture this at the stakes. For them the happy hunting grounds now. They knew it, but as their father's son had acquitted themselves, they knew it, but as their father's sons they acquitted themselves. Even then they had time together in a phalanx that would have hard to break had they risen quickly. But this they were forbidden to do by the traditions of their race. It is written that the noble savage must never express surprise in the presence of the white. Thus terrible as the sudden appearance of the pirates must have been to them, they remained stationary for a moment, not a muscle moving, as if the foe had come by invitation. Then, indeed, the tradition gallantly upheld, they seized their weapons, and the air was torn with the war cry, but it was now too late. It is no part of ours to describe what was the massacre rather than a fight. Thus perished many of the flower of the Piccaninny tribe. Thus perished many of the flower of the Piccaninny tribe. Not all unavenged did they die, for with lean Wolf fell Alf Manson, to disturb the Spanish men no more, and among others who beat the dust were Gio, Scory, Chess, Turley, and the Alsatian Fogarty, Turley fell to the tomahawk of the terrible Panther. Turley fell to the tomahawk of the terrible Panther, who ultimately cut a way through the pirates with Tiger Lily and a small remnant of the tribe. The tribe. To what extent Hook is to blame for his tactics To what extent Hook is to blame for his tactics on this occasion is for the historians to decide. Had he awaited on the rising ground till the proper hour, he and his men would probably have been butchered. And in judging him, it is only fair to take into this account. And in judging and in judging and in judging him, it is only fair to take this into account. What he should perhaps have done was to acquaint his opponents that he proposed to follow a new method. On the other hand, this, as destroying the element of surprise, would have made his strategy of no avail. So the whole question is beset with difficulties. One cannot at least withhold a reluctant admiration. One cannot at least withhold a reluctant admiration for the wish that had conceived so bold a scheme, and, and the fell genius with which it was carried out. What were his own feelings about himself at that triumphant moment? What were his own feelings about himself at that triumphant moment? Fain, fain, fain would, fain would his dog have known. As breathing heavily and wiping their cutlasses, they gathered at a discreet distance from his hook, and squinted through their ferret eyes at this extraordinary man. Elation must have been in his heart, but his face did not reflect it. Ever a dark, ever a dark and solitary enigma, he stood aloof from his followers in spirit as he stood aloof from his followers in spirit as in substance. The night's work was not yet over, for it was not the redskins he had come out to destroy. They were but the bees to be smoked, so that he should get all the so that they were but the bees to be smoked, so that he should get at the honey. So that he should get at the honey. They were but the bees to be smoked, so that he should get at the honey. It was Pen he wanted. Pen and Wendy and their band, but chiefly Pen. Peter was such a Peter was such a small boy that one tends to wonder at a man's hatred for him. That one tends to wonder at the man's hatred of him. True, he had flung Hook's arm to the crocodile, but even this, and the increasing security of life to which it led, owing to the crocodile's pertinence, pertinacity, hardly account for the vindic, vin, vindictiveness. Vindictive. I have to look how to pronounce this. Vindictiveness. Hardly account for a vindictiveness. Hardly account for a vindictiveness so relentless and malignant. The truth is that there was something about Pierre which goaded the pirate captain to frenzy. It was not his courage. It was not his engaging appearance. It was not. There is no beating about the bush, for we know quite well what it was, and have got to tell. It was Pierre's cockiness. This had got on Hook's nerves. It made his iron claw twitch, and that night it disturbed him like an insect. While Peter lived, the tortured man felt that he was a lion in a cage into which a sparrow had come. The question now, the question now, the question now was how to get down the trees, or how to. The question now was how to get down the trees, or how to get his dogs down. He ran his greedy eyes over them, searching for the thinnest ones. They wriggled uncomfortably, for they knew he would not scruple to ram them down with poles. In the meantime, what of the boys? We have seen them at the first clang of the weapons, turned as if it, turned as it turned as it were into stone figures, open-mouthed, all appealing with outstretched arms to Peter, and we return to them as their mouths close, and their arms fall to their sides. The pandemonium above has ceased The pandemonium about has ceased almost as suddenly as it arose, passed like a first gust of wind. But they know that in the passing, but they know that in the passing it has determined their fate. Which side had won? The pirates, listening avidly at the mouths of the trees, heard the question put by every boy, and alas, they also heard Peter's answer. If the Redskins have won, he said, they will beat the Tauntaun. It is always the sign of victory. Now Smith had found the Tauntaun, and was at that moment sitting on it. You will never hear the Tauntaun again, he muttered, but inaudibly of course, for strict silence had been enjoined. To his amazement, Hawk signed him to beat the Tauntaun, and slowly there came to Smith under an understanding of the dreadful weakness of the other. Never, probably, had a simple man admired Huck so much. Smith beat upon the instrument, and then stopped to listen gleefully. The Tauntaun, the miscreants heard Peter cry, an Indian victory. The doomed children answered with a cheer that was music to the black hearts above, and almost immediately they repeated their goodbyes to Peter. This puzzled the pirates, but all their other feelings were swallowed by a base delight that the enemy were about to come up to the trees. Come up the were about to come up the trees. They smirked at each other and rubbed their hands. Rapidly and silently, Hope gave his orders. One man to each tree, and the others to arrange themselves in a line 2 yards apart. And that's the end of the pretty difficult chapter to read. Wow, I felt very, very. This chapter was really, really difficult to read. And it is a small chapter and took almost 20 minutes to read. That means that I have a lot to practice. I'm gonna read this chapter again alone to practice it. I think I have this chapter challenged me a lot. Okay, guys, I'm gonna see you and you're gonna hear me in the next one. Goodbye.